In her youth, Ivy had been fond of a girl. When that girl returned to the country after her divorce, I was forgotten in a heavy rain that day. I borrowed an umbrella from a passing sanitation worker and went straight to the airport. Casually buying a ticket for the nearest flight, I figured anywhere was fine, as long as it was without John and Rose. At 6 p.m., John's car arrived home. The one who greeted him was the housekeeper, not his wife, Ivy. Only then did John remember that because he was worried about Rose, he had forgotten to go to the market to pick her up. But it was all right. His wife had a gentle disposition and never got angry over such trivial matters. 7 o'clock, the rain stopped, the sky was very dark, and Ivy still hadn't returned home. A sense of inexplicable panic began to creep into John's heart. He called her 3 times. The first time, no one answered. The second and third times also went unanswered. That heavy rain had come so suddenly that the sky seemed to darken in an instant. I struggled a bit to run under the roadside eaves to take shelter from the rain, dazed as I watched the heavy rain engulf the sky. An hour ago, John had said he would come to pick me up, but there was still no sign of him. The girls sheltering from the rain beside me were gradually being picked up by people, their boyfriends or husbands, tilting their umbrellas completely over their heads, carefully shielding them. I thought John must be sheltering Rose carefully like this right now, in every possible way. The girl he had been fond of in his youth, whom they had missed due to fate. It was said that after she got married, she had suffered a lot of grievances. In these 3 months of divorce lawsuits, Rose's mother had also passed away. John often worried so much that he couldn't sleep at night, sighing endlessly. Today was the day Rose's divorce was finalized and she returned to the country. Early in the morning, John had showered, put on a brand new tailored suit, paired with a light-colored mandala pattern tie. After marriage, I was in charge of his meals and clothing, but that tie wasn't bought by me. The rain probably wouldn't stop. Noisy like the sound of rain was the feeling in my heart, but suddenly it became quiet again. "Auntie," I smiled and waved to the sanitation worker. I used the seafood I had just bought to exchange for the old umbrella in her hand. She looked at it, overjoyed. I couldn't help but curve my lips too. The umbrella was very old, but it could shield from wind and rain much better than a man who was late and never came. I walked out of the market, casually hailed a taxi by the roadside, and went to the airport. Only then did I realize that I had nowhere to go. I only had a grandmother left, but if I went to find her, the old lady would surely know that I must have suffered grievances. In the end, I casually bought a ticket for the nearest flight. I thought anywhere was fine, as long as it was without John and Rose. 3 years of marriage, Rose was like air, silently filling my life. I didn't want to endure it anymore. As I boarded the plane, my cell phone suddenly rang. The call was from John. I hesitated and didn't answer. Waiting until the ringing stopped, I blocked his number. John arrived home at 6 p.m. When the car came to a complete stop, only the servant came to greet him. He paused for a moment, then took off his coat, didn't hand it to the servant, but draped it over his arm instead. "Where's Madam?" "Madam hasn't returned yet." John stopped in his tracks. Only then did he remember that Ivy had suddenly wanted to go to the market to buy fresh food. He said he would pick her up and they would go home together, but Rose had cried until she fainted at her mother's grave. He hurriedly took Rose to the hospital, forgetting about picking her up. John looked at the pouring rain outside. A hint of guilt vaguely arose in his heart. Would Ivy be angry? But as soon as this thought appeared, John laughed and shook his head. He had never met anyone with a gentler and more generous disposition than his wife. She had never been angry over such small things. "Master, I see you've been caught in the rain. You should quickly take a hot bath," the servant reminded softly. John nodded. "If Madam comes back, tell her I'm upstairs." He went upstairs to take a hot bath, but for some reason, while bathing, he felt a little uneasy. When he came out of the bathroom, he felt a slight stuffiness in his nose, wanting to take some cold medicine, but couldn't find the medicine box. John glanced at his wristwatch, almost 7 o'clock already, and Ivy still hadn't returned home. The rain outside seemed to have stopped, but the sky was even darker. He took out his cell phone and called Ivy. The ring-tone went on for a long time, but no one answered, and eventually it automatically hung up. John frowned. This was unprecedented. Ivy would absolutely not miss his calls. Perhaps the heavy rain caused traffic jams on the road, or some unexpected event. John felt his heart suddenly tighten a little. He quickly made a second call, but just now it could still be dialed, but now it couldn't be reached at all. He frowned even more, his face gradually turning cold, but he still patiently made a third call. Still, it couldn't be connected. He held the phone, stood there for a while, and then casually searched online. So his situation was due to being blocked by the other party. John suddenly laughed in anger. He felt he should take back his words about never having met anyone with a gentler and more generous disposition than his wife. When the plane landed in that strange city, it was already late at night. The signal was restored on my cell phone, and several new notifications appeared. I noticed a strange phone number sending several messages. Hello, Ivy, I'm Rose. I heard you're angry and sulking at John because of me not coming home yet. I'm very worried and very sorry. I think I need to explain to you a bit about the matter between John and me. He did indeed once like me, but that was also a childhood thing. John always called me sister, and I also regarded him as a younger brother. Because of me, if there's a distance between you two, this is really not something I want to see. No one hopes John can be happier than me. Ivy, after receiving my message, can you call John back? Or at least let us know you're safe. I found it very funny. If she was worried about my safety, there were countless ways. With John's family background, investigating my news and exact location was as easy as turning over his hand. But after I left home, the first person to find me was not the police, but Rose. I really hated that any slight movement in my life, Rose would quickly know. I didn't reply, but Rose was very patient. She called me. I answered. The other end of the phone was silent for a moment, then suddenly, a very soft laugh came through, followed by Rose's voice. So, you're not as good as John said. You're indeed very good at enduring, only starting to make trouble after 3 years. Rose suddenly called my name. Ivy, if you are willing to voluntarily give up your position, then I will give John to you, plus a little alimony. I laughed. Ms. Rose, you've been divorced once and experienced difficult divorce lawsuits. You must have a lot of experience. Then please, if I can get more money, I will invite Ms. Rose for coffee. After speaking, I directly hung up the phone, then blocked that number, and set it to block all calls from unknown numbers. On the third day Ivy left home, John made a phone call to her grandmother thousands of miles away. After exchanging pleasantries, he probed, "Grandma, Ivy said a few days ago she wanted to come back to visit you." "No need to come back. I'm very well. The road is so far. Don't tire yourself out." John clenched his phone. On the rooftop, so vast, one could see the red sun setting in the west, and his heart seemed to sink little by little, like that sun. He knew Ivy only had this one relative left, so he naturally assumed that she must be sulking with him, temporarily returning to her grandmother's place. But she hadn't gone. So where had Ivy gone these past few days? He turned around and glanced at that familiar dressing table. The dressing table was still completely clean as before, but she still hadn't taken her comb away. He walked over, picked up the comb, still with a few strands of long hair on it. Ivy's hair was very thick, very black, never dyed. He clenched the comb, lost in thought, bewildered. It was the second time Rose called that brought him back to his senses. "John, I just passed by your garden and saw the roses are all withered." Rose's gentle voice came through. "Tell the gardener to clear them away. They look very ugly." "No need." This was the first time he directly refused Rose. Rose was obviously slightly startled, but quickly said, John, are you angry? You should be. This is your and Ivy's home. Of course you two are the masters. Rose's ending sound choked up. John's heart softened. I didn't mean that. Still no news of Ivy. No, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have come back. Rose wept softly. Listening to that faint weeping, John inexplicably felt a little irritated. Ivy rarely cried, only on their wedding night. Because of the pain of being possessed by him, she cried for a while. And another time, in the first year after their marriage, he missed her birthday. It seemed it was because Rose's husband was domestically violent. He was too worried, so he flew abroad overnight. John didn't understand why he felt a little annoyed. Married for 3 years, he had never known Ivy to have such a stubborn side. He walked to the bedside and sat down. After thinking for a long time, he still decided to call Ivy's only good friend. That friend was very surprised, saying she hadn't received a call from Ivy, nor had Ivy come to her city. When John hung up the phone, his hand was still slightly trembling. He lit a cigarette, but didn't smoke it. Ivy was a bit of a neat freak. When she was home, every corner of the house was free of any peculiar smell. The phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar landline number. In the past, he would definitely never answer this kind of call, but this time he immediately answered it. Hello. His voice was slightly trembling. John, it's me, Ivy. For some reason, when Ivy's familiar voice rang out, John, who was always indifferent and taciturn, inexplicably had a somewhat stern expression. Ivy, you're not a 3-year-old child. Such naive things like running away from home are things you, at your age, shouldn't do. Do you know if this matter spreads, what kind of bad influence it will have on the John family? Sorry. John clenched the phone, yanked off his tie, but felt the heavy stone pressing on his heart suddenly move away. Knowing you're wrong, then quickly come back, his tone softened a few degrees. John, I'm looking for you for something else. What is it? What needs to be sent? When you come home, just bring it back. Wouldn't that be all right? Ivy's tone still maintained that gentle, calm cadence. I'm not going home anymore. Please pay attention to signing for the express delivery, okay? After reading it, if there's no objection, then sign it. I will call you back in 2 days. This phone call is borrowed from someone else. Don't call back. I won't answer. Ivy, what do you mean? John only felt his heart, which had just been relaxed, suddenly lifted again. John, marrying you for 3 years, I've lived a bit unhappily. So, let's get divorced. John said nothing. Ivy also said nothing, as if politely waiting for him to reply. Where are you now? This is not important. John glanced at the silent sunset outside the window. Ivy, what are you messing around for? On the other end of the phone, Ivy didn't continue to say a word. It seemed she laughed very softly, then directly hung up the phone. John almost subconsciously immediately called back, but the person who answered the phone was an unfamiliar aunt. She spoke in some dialect John couldn't understand. He could only say sorry, then hung up. The heavy sunset enveloped him. He sat quietly in that heavy sunset, motionless. Married for 3 years, Ivy was like a cup of lukewarm water, perpetually at 45 degrees. She never got angry, never lost her temper, always spoke gently and softly. Everyone liked her, praised her, to the point that he almost forgot that their marriage was initially just a matter of grievances between elders. How could she rely on such insignificant kindness to get the position of the eldest daughter-in-law of the John family? How could she be as generous, harmless, and without scheming as she appeared? John turned around, walked to the front of the dressing table, threw down the comb he had been holding, frowned tightly. In his eyes, a flame of anger rose, an emotion he had never revealed before, but now was stirred up by this little thing to the point of repeated impropriety. John quickly recovered his expressionless face, stepped out of the bedroom. Going downstairs, Rose in the living room downstairs called him. He just faintly uttered a sound and told the servant to get the express delivery that had arrived today. John took out the mail Ivy sent from it. Opening it, Rose standing beside him covered her mouth, softly exclaimed in surprise. John indifferently tore up the divorce agreement and threw it into the trash can. John. Rose stepped forward, gently tugged at his sleeve, softly. Don't be angry. Ivy must just be temporarily impulsive. She's always been gentle and knows what's important. Thinking about it, it's still my fault. If I hadn't returned to the country, hadn't bothered you, these things wouldn't have happened, and she wouldn't be sulking. John's voice was cold. What does it have to do with you? It's her own lack of understanding. Isn't it because you've spoiled her? Rose laughed exaggeratedly. I've heard no less than once abroad that you two are very loving. Before she finished speaking, she suddenly shed tears. John sneered. Why did I marry her in the first place? Others may not know clearly. Don't you know either? Rose stared blankly at him in astonishment. John, is it really because of me? John didn't answer, only gently pulled his sleeve back. I have something to go out for, a busy trip. Do you want the driver to take you back, or stay here? Rose wiped away her tears. I'll wait for you here. You and Ivy are in such a mess, I wouldn't be able to sleep if I went back. John nodded, instructed the servant to clean up the guest room, and told the driver to prepare the car. Then turned around and left. Rose watched him leave, then glanced at the torn divorce agreement in the trash can. She pursed her lips slowly and sat on the sofa. Why did John tear up the divorce agreement? He seemed like he didn't want to divorce Ivy at all. The day I left, I knew John wanted to find someone's location as easy as turning over his hand, just depending on whether he wanted to or not. So when I saw John downstairs at the inn, I wasn't too surprised. Early autumn weather, he wore a thin gray coat, leaned against the car door, smoking. His appearance was handsome, and his figure was tall. Every movement was very eye-catching. In comparison, I seemed extremely ordinary. Long dress, loose cotton linen shirt, long hair casually tied up with a handkerchief, no makeup, carrying a supermarket shopping bag, even more like a former housekeeper in the John family when I first married him. I used to often feel inferior and self-conscious, but now I had long thought it through. Like home-cooked stir-fried vegetables, forever unable to get on the banquet table of a luxurious feast. John and I were wrong from the very beginning. He stubbed out the cigarette, looked at me with a cold expression. I also put down the shopping bag in my hand. John raised his hand to look at his watch. When he spoke, his tone was completely as cold as before. Go, pack up your things a bit. 30 minutes should be enough. Have you signed it? I reached out to him. Give me the divorce agreement. Give it to me. I'll go back and handle the procedures with you. In John's indifferent eyes, there was still no emotion, only a sharper gaze. Now is not the time to announce the news of our divorce to the outside world. Then first, handle the procedures properly without publicizing. John curved his lips. In his smile was hidden sarcasm. Ivy, do you know this weekend is the company's first anniversary party? You have to attend with me. John curved his lips. In his smile was hidden sarcasm. Ivy, do you know this weekend is the company's first anniversary party? You have to attend with me. John curved his lips. In his smile was hidden sarcasm. Ivy, do you know this weekend is the company's first anniversary party? You have to attend with me. John curved his lips. In his smile was hidden sarcasm. Ivy, do you know this weekend is the company's first anniversary party? You have to attend with me. You chose a very accurate time to make trouble, but you should know clearly that I am not someone to be manipulated by others. I didn't speak, just silently looked at John. We had done all the most intimate things between husband and wife, but men could distinguish very clearly between sex and love, while women could not. That rain didn't wet my body, but my heart was drenched. But John would never understand, because he had never loved me. If you sign the divorce agreement, then this weekend, I will attend the company's first anniversary party with you. Whatever the company needs me to cooperate with, I can. I looked at him, even smiling gently, just like before. John, this is not bad for you at all. He looked at me deeply for a while, a long time, and finally nodded. After the company's first anniversary party this weekend ends, I will officially sign. I didn't go back with John. Only on the day before the company's first anniversary party began, I made time to return to Beijing. Again, in order to cover people's eyes and ears and not let paparazzi write random divorce rumors, he personally picked me up from the airport and took me home. When I got out of the car, Rose ran out to greet me like a hostess. "Ivy, you're finally back." She strode forward, took my hand, her eyes red, tears falling. I coldly looked at her. Her clothes, jewelry, makeup were obviously meticulously prepared, a kind of low-key yet comfortable luxury outfit, like every young lady of a wealthy family receiving guests in their home. I didn't speak, just pulled my hand back. Rose had very beautiful manicured nails. On her slender white fingers, she wore a gemstone ring and a diamond ring. But on my hand, there was nothing. The wedding ring had long been taken off. Even in the palm of my hand, there was a slightly thin callus. Initially, when I knew of Rose's existence, I was foolishly, secretly comparing myself to her in my heart. But now, no matter how beautiful and graceful she was, there was no ripple in my heart. I didn't look at her anymore, nor did I answer. Carrying my bag, I walked around her and walked forward. Rose was a little embarrassed, biting her lip. The servant came out to greet. "Madam, let me take it." I smiled, avoiding it. "No need." The servant didn't dare to say much, a little embarrassed, looked towards John. "Let her be." John withdrew his gaze and walked towards the main house, but I didn't go to the main house with him, but went to the guest building. "Ivy." John finally lost his temper, perhaps because in front of a bunch of servants, my doing so really made him and Rose embarrassed. I didn't stop, nor did I respond. I didn't have any need to communicate with John. Now I just wanted the company's first anniversary party to end smoothly, and then our marriage could also end quickly. When John and I walked into the banquet hall hand in hand, the atmosphere was reaching its climax. He was still like a gentle and caring husband, and I was also completely as before, the virtuous wife praised by everyone, gentle. When chatting with people, he and I intertwined our fingers tightly, occasionally tilting his head to glance at me, his expression gentle. I would also lower my head and smile softly, but before, the smile was shyness and joy from the bottom of my heart. Now it was wearing a mask. I hated myself like this, and also despised him like this, only hoping to end it sooner. But towards the end of the banquet, in front of me was placed a seafood dish. A faint fishy smell assaulted my nose. In my stomach, suddenly everything churned up. I excused myself, stood up, and quickly walked to the restroom, vomiting until I was dizzy. When I stood up, my eyes went black and I fainted. Waiting until I opened my eyes, I was already in the hospital. Many people from the John family had come. John was seated beside my bed. He held my hand tightly, his face showing rare joy. "Ivy, do you know you're pregnant?" "Just 45 days. His voice was low, gentle, and soft, as if afraid of scaring me. In that instant, I suddenly felt a little flustered. John, it was very rare for him to be so gentle. 3 years of time passed in a flash, and there were only scattered instances like this, while in 3 years, the number of times he met Rose was also extremely few, but each time was gentle enough, only gentle to Rose, barely because that was the person he liked. And the gentleness to me before was not because of me, now it was only because of the baby in my belly. "Grandma already knows about your pregnancy." He held my hand, the smile at the corner of his lips also gentle. "I've already sent someone to pick up Grandma. She's very happy on the phone, so excited she cried." I lay on the bed, suddenly also shedding tears. 3 years of marriage, not being pregnant was Grandma's heart disease, but Grandma always didn't know that I wasn't pregnant because John said he didn't want children, wanted to experience a world of 2 people for a few years. In the past, he had always been very careful about contraception. But now, why could he be so happy? After the John family members left, the ward became quiet again. John brought me water. Don't mention divorce anymore. Take good care of your body, rest assured, and have your baby. I pushed away that glass of warm water. I don't want this child. The emotion on John's face didn't waver at all. He lowered his head, looked down at me. Tell Grandma yourself. Just if you're willing to let Grandma, who is so old, still be heartbroken for you. John was sure I would continue to compromise for fear of worrying Grandma. But he had forgotten that when my grandmother was young, she dared to tear foot-binding cloths to oppose her parents, dared to break off engagement and elope, alone running thousands of miles to find relatives to rely on. After her husband became addicted to drugs, she dared to decisively divorce and then secretly take her only daughter away. Now she was old, looking weak and kind, not vying for power, but I knew if Grandma knew about the matter between me and John, she would definitely support all my decisions. John refused all company matters and began to wholeheartedly take care of me. The matter of my fainting at the first anniversary party and being diagnosed with pregnancy had long spread like wildfire. Reporters and media crowded outside the hospital, packed like sardines. The day I was discharged from the hospital, the John family's reception was very grand. Everyone said I had a good life, with such humble origins, marrying into the John family, husband caring, parents-in-law loving, and pregnant again. It could be said I was a winner in life. Speaking of which, it was truly ridiculous. The world's assessment of a woman's victory or defeat often looked at what men brought to her. No one paid attention to the person herself, nor did anyone care what kind of turbulent undercurrents were hidden in her real life. Rose had left Beijing. Her maternal grandfather's side wanted her to go back there to live permanently. In the car, John held my hand. From the beginning, I told you, between me and Rose, it shouldn't be considered romantic love. We grew up together since childhood. In our youth, to save me, she smashed her forehead open, and there's still a scar now. Since childhood, I've been very fond of her, but now I only regard her as a sister. Ivy, you really have no reason to be concerned about such a small matter. But if you mind, then in the future, I will also pay attention. I won't meet Rose alone again, nor will I have any more contact. John held my shoulders tightly, wanting to pull me into his chest. Let everything stop here. We have a child already. In the future, a family of 3, living well together, okay? Actually, at that time, I almost believed it. It was said that when a woman is pregnant, she will secrete a kind of hormone. That kind of hormone will make her unwilling to hurt the tiny embryo in her belly. In these days, I had been conflicted, tangled, and wavering. Grandma had also said to me, the appearance may be someone else's, but the child is always your own. To be honest, in that moment, my thoughts had wavered. Perhaps discovering pregnancy at this time was heaven giving me and John another chance. No woman wants to kill her own child with her own hands, and I was no exception. But just when I wavered, Rose figured out a way to contact me. Do you know why from half a year ago John suddenly stopped contraception? I was startled. It seemed to be true that starting from then, John no longer continued to try to prevent pregnancy. Because at that time, I had already decided to divorce. She must want to say, if I decided to divorce, John should be more careful about contraception, right? Rose said to this point, suddenly laughing, her laughter a bit harsh and a bit desolate. Ivy, I can't give birth. If I could give birth, why would John compromise and marry you in the first place? So, do you know why your child came? It's only because it's paving the way for me that it has the honor to come to this world. I originally shouldn't have told you at this time, should have waited until the fruit was ripe and fell naturally. The baby was born. But Ivy, in her voice, she carried a jealousy that would rather destroy Jade than preserve integrity. I changed my mind. I'd rather destroy this road than have you give birth to John's child. I sat in that place, feeling my body very cold. That kind of coldness, like from the soles of my feet, filled my whole body in an instant. But I unexpectedly didn't cry. On the contrary, inexplicably, there was a kind of feeling of being relieved of a burden. I clearly felt that all feelings, all bonds to John, just like that, lightly, completely let go. Have you ever thought, if I definitely want to give birth to this child, what then? You're not a person with that kind of personality. You look gentle, generous, tolerant, and forgiving, but in your eyes, you can't tolerate even a grain of sand. I suddenly laughed. Rose, thank you for telling me these things. Ivy, don't hate me, I just love him too much. You know, love is forever selfish and blind. I said nothing, cut off the conversation, stood up, and walked to the window. The sunset in the garden, almost all the roses had withered. A gust of wind blew. The last flower at the end of the branch also fell to the muddy ground. Flowers fall, it's time to wake up from the dream. The day John had dinner with Ivy for the last time, she wore a light blue dress. That dress was quite familiar. He thought for a while before remembering that the first time they met, Ivy seemed to also be wearing this one. He was then fighting against the family, failing. Rose was heartbroken, in despair, marrying in a distant foreign land. He went to meet Ivy for the sake of appeasement, wanting to find an excuse to drive her away, but before he could say harsh words, she had already reddened her eyes. John had never seen a girl hold back so many tears. Her eyes were very big. Those tears gathered in her eye sockets for a long time before pouring down with a rush. She softly said, Sorry. I really didn't know you were forced to meet me. Let me go back and tell the elders in the family to dissolve our engagement." Because he spoke harsh words without choosing words, she was so embarrassed that she cried and still kept saying sorry to him. John watched her cry, stood up, and knocked over the coffee. Coffee stains soiled her light blue dress. She lowered her head, wiped her tears falling down drop by drop. For some reason, his heart slightly wavered, thinking of love without hope, thinking of Rose already married. He gave birth to a kind of despondency like drifting duckweed. "Your name is Ivy, right?" She was slightly stunned for a moment, nodded, "Yes." "Do you want to marry me?" She clenched the hem of her dress, pursed her lips, thick eyelashes curved up, covering her reddish eye sockets. She nodded very softly, her face reddening again. "Then let's get married." She suddenly widened her eyes, her expression extremely surprised. But just now you." He laughed, his body leaning back, leaning against the back of the chair, lazily looking at her. "The descendants of the John family all have good-looking skins, let alone when I was young, hot-tempered, and still slightly frivolous." He looked at her. She smiled like this. She was already too shy. "Just teasing you a bit, little sister Ivy. When you go back, absolutely don't complain to Grandma about me." She hurriedly shook her head. "No, I won't complain." After speaking, her earlobes were burning red, not daring to look at him anymore. After the date, he took her home. When getting out of the car, he held her hand. 3 months later, they got engaged. 7 months later, she married him. And now, she had been married to him for 3 years, with their child in her belly. John felt a very strange emotion surging in his heart. This child came at the right time, within his plan. He should have been happy, but that happiness seemed to have other meanings. In these days, he often couldn't help but think, was the baby a boy or a girl? Of course, a boy was best, but if it was a girl, if her appearance was very similar to Ivy, it probably wouldn't be bad either. But why did he hope the baby would resemble Ivy? His original intention was that this child would, in the future, call Rose mother. John vaguely felt that something seemed to be starting to go out of control, but he unexpectedly didn't want to stop on the brink. He was invisibly wanting to lose control to the end. That dinner was cooked by Ivy herself. That day, she didn't vomit, her spirits were not bad, so he also indulged her. She even drank a little fruit wine that was harmless to pregnant women with him. When he was slightly tipsy, he felt Ivy seemed very beautiful. "Did you put on makeup?" "A little bit, very light." The lipstick color was very pretty. Thank you. She smiled, her eyes slightly narrowed. He also smiled, stood up, and walked behind her, his hands resting on the back of the chair beside her. John lowered his head, his high nose bridge brushed past her thick sideburns. It was intimate and enchanting. Tell the servant to move your things to the master bedroom, okay? She didn't nod, but didn't shake her head either, only raised her wine glass and drank another glass with him. Then he led her to stroll in the garden. The moon was bright, stars were sparse, on the lawn there was a layer of slightly dry rose petals falling. Along the way, she was very quiet, only the autumn wind blowing through the hem of her long dress. John walked behind her, suddenly feeling slightly drunk, felt the scene looked very flavorful, the good old days. Then she didn't return to the master bedroom. He didn't remember much. He slept very deeply, very long. When he woke up from sleep, it was already noon the next day. He turned over, subconsciously reached for the bedside. Ivy was not there. The wine made his head a little painful. He reluctantly sat up. In the empty bedroom, on the large bed, there was only one pillow. Last night, she also didn't come back to the room. But John at that time still didn't know that not only last night, from now on, day and night, Ivy would also not return to this place another step. After the surgery was completed, Grandma waited outside to pick me up for discharge from the hospital. I wrapped myself in a thick coat, but still felt cold and shivering. The effect of the anesthesia wore off. The depths of my lower abdomen vaguely began to ache. Grandma placed a hot water bag on my stomach. I held Grandma's hand tightly. Ivy, go home with Grandma. Grandma's body was slightly hunched, her legs also bent, but her hands were still very warm, strong, like giving me great courage to move forward. Before, Grandma had said to the John family, "We don't need to repay any kindness." The principle of marriage, if not well matched in social status, then happiness is difficult. Grandma understood better than anyone else. Now, at this step, Grandma also didn't blame anyone, only heartbroken for her granddaughter. I leaned on Grandma's shoulder, acting spoiled, heartbroken for granddaughter. Then Grandma make a bowl of chicken egg soup for granddaughter to eat, okay? It's been a long time since I ate chicken egg soup. Grandma made it. From then on, Grandma would make it for me every day. I supported Grandma. Grandma supported me. The midday sun shone on us. Finally, I felt a little warmth on my body. When walking to the hospital door, I saw John's car. He stepped out of the car, his face cold, the corner of his lips curled up. Grandma subconsciously wanted to protect me behind her, but I gently shook my head. John strode to my front. He reached out and tightly grasped my shoulder. Ivy, where's the child? Gone? How dare you? How dare you, Ivy? He tightly grasped my shoulder, his fingers gradually exerting force. I saw his face pale, ashen, his eyes filled with anger and pain. Very painful. Painful is good. I bit by bit pried his fingers away. Excuse me, please quickly sign. Finish the divorce procedures. I won't divorce you. John's voice was low, cold, word by word. I was slightly surprised, but also didn't have too many emotions. Then Sue, if you want to make a big deal, turn what was once called praise into after-dinner jokes. I laughed, no problem. Then I'll also listen to you. John still wanted to say something, but his phone suddenly rang. I vaguely heard the name Rose again, then his face changed. Got it, I'll go there right away. His tone was hurried, answering. He hung up the phone, looked towards me. Ivy, wait for me to come back. We'll talk properly. But I didn't wait for him to come back to negotiate. I directly went to find old Mrs. John didn't hide anything, nor had I added any exaggeration, just recounted what Rose had said once. That year, old Mrs. John couldn't accept Rose's inability to give birth. Acting as the villain, wielding the stick to separate the lovers, yet turning a blind eye, she had to accept a daughter-in-law like me. Under the pressure of the elders, for these 3 years, She had been indifferent to me, but not harsh. When she knew I was pregnant, she was actually very happy. But now her grandchild was gone. I thought even if she hated me, the person she hated even more was only Rose. Rose wanted to rekindle her old love with John. Perhaps in this lifetime, she wouldn't be able to pass old Mrs. John's hurdle. Rose said one sentence very correctly: "My personality is actually not generous at all. I am very selfish. I hope the person I like in their heart, in their eyes, only has me. I also hope that the person who hurt me, the rest of their life will not pass happily and joyfully. Because when they hurt innocent people, they also never had a bit of pity and regret." Old Mrs. John was an extremely decisive and ruthless woman. Just like that year, she fluently wielded the stick to separate the lovers, making Rose have no choice but to marry far away. Now she took action again. I and John quickly dissolved our marital relationship in law. And Rose, under old Mrs. John's tough tactics, the Rose family couldn't withstand the pressure and began to force her to get married again. It was said she even made a scene demanding suicide. John watched over her day and night in the hospital. It was also said John was fierce, wanting to marry Rose. Old Mrs. John was so angry that she slapped him twice, wanting to drive him out of the John family. But all these things had nothing to do with me. I followed Grandma back to the small town thousands of miles away, once again renovated Grandma's house, planning to plant roses all over the yard next spring. At the end of the first month, John suddenly came to find me. Grandma didn't open the door. He stood outside waiting for a long time until dawn before leaving. And early the next morning, when I went out to get milk, I saw him again. Early winter weather, he only wore a thin coat. I, afraid of the cold, wrapped myself in Grandma's long cotton coat. Looking at each other, we were forever like people from two worlds. The neighbors curiously assessed him. He stopped in his tracks, not moving. After all, in a small town like ours, it was rare to see such a handsome and extravagant man. But I only glanced at him once and shifted my gaze. In my youth, I was attracted by his appearance, foolishly married over without hesitation. But after all, marriage is like drinking water, warm or cold, one knows for oneself. The path I chose myself, I also had to accept. John didn't say anything, but he followed me all the way. I got the milk, finished buying breakfast, and returned. He also followed all the way. Until the yard gate of my house. Finally, he spoke, calling my name, Ivy. I didn't stop, pushed open the yard gate and went in, turned around to prepare to close the door. John stepped forward again, reached out, and stopped it. "Ivy, next spring, Rose will get married." After I grew up, it seemed I had never been angry with anyone, even arguing with others. But this time, I suddenly took action, the warm milk in my hand, splashed it back onto his face. His coat, so expensive it made people gasp, and the cashmere sweater inside, were all dirted. He was slightly surprised, frowned. "Ivy, John, if the person she marries next spring is you, then I will still respect you as a man. But now it seems you don't love her that much either. After all, giving up the identity of the John family heir is enough to marry her as your wife, but you can't bear to." Those words of Ivy's were only half right. He indeed didn't love Rose that much anymore, but it wasn't because he couldn't bear the so-called heir identity. He had long since stopped liking her as much as he did in his youth. After Ivy became pregnant, John actually thought about a family of 3 living well together. Those once had dirty thoughts he would bury deep in his heart for life. He had once, because of sympathy and pity, crossed that line with Rose in a foreign land in the night and momentarily impulsively promised Rose related to children and marriage. But actually, he had regretted it very early on. But Rose told Ivy, and then she didn't hesitate at all to destroy that child. And at the moment of knowing there was no longer a child, in John's heart, there was only one thought in his head, which was that he couldn't keep Ivy. Like Rose's falling is falling. But in their wedding room, ivy was everywhere. The servants often said, "Madam is like this, Madam likes this." And also him, every time he came home at 6 o'clock, knowing clearly that the person had long left, but still looked forward to the person coming out to greet him was her. He had once felt ivy was a cup of insipid lukewarm water, perpetually maintaining a stable temperature of 45 degrees, an existence that wasn't important. But how could people leave water? He often thought of their last dinner, the way she drank a little fruit wine. The lipstick color she wore that day was very pretty. He often thought, if when strolling afterwards, he had held her hand tightly, he had hugged her from behind, he had gently called out, "Wife," she might have softened and given him another chance. He also often thought, if in that heavy rain that day, he hadn't forgotten to pick her up, he had appeared in front of her in time, would the ending of the story be completely different? But saying these things was all without any meaning anymore. He could only tell himself to look forward. Ivy was still single. Ivy refused many men's pursuits. Ivy, after all, had loved him very, very much that year. In a year, he would come to her place 2 or 3 times. But on the 9th time he went to find her, a similar old story was staged again, but the male protagonist in that old story was no longer him. That day it rained very heavily, just like the time he forgot to pick her up. But the male protagonist this time didn't make a mistake like him. In the pouring rain, the other man's car steadily stopped in the rain. Ivy stood under the curved eaves to avoid the rain. Seeing the car arrive, she was about to run to the car, but the man immediately waved his hand to stop her. First, he braved the rain to get out of the car, getting drenched by the rain, went to get an umbrella, then quickly walked to her feet. The umbrella opened, almost completely tilting towards her, shielding her to get in the car first. Actually, it was only a very short distance, only 2 or 3 steps, but the man couldn't bear to let her get a little bit of rain, willing to let himself be drenched by the rain. John just sat in the car, stunned watching that scene. The wiper moved little by little, quickly. The whole world was almost swallowed by the heavy rain. The car carrying Ivy sped far away, no longer visible. And the heavy rain from a few years ago, the heavy rain that he had forgotten Ivy in, rained like pouring water on his body for a long time. John smiled miserably. He started the car, turned the car around. The car, like an arrow leaving the bow, pierced through the thick rain curtain. In a fleeting moment, he seemed to see Ivy again, tender and young. When they had just gotten engaged, his mother didn't like her, but his grandmother liked her very much. At the engagement, Grandma had instructed her, "Ivy, if John bullies you, come tell Grandma. Grandma will be your support." So at that time, every time she was teased by him until she was too shy, she would always say one sentence, "I'll find Grandma to complain about you." He couldn't help but laugh, and thought of their wedding night. She cried from pain. He hugged and coaxed, jokingly said, "Why don't you say, 'Find Grandma to complain'?" She cried and laughed angrily, pounced over and bit him once, and he lowered his head to kiss her. She obediently closed her eyes under him. John finally understood. Actually, that year, when he first saw Ivy, he had already liked her. It's just a pity. People often sigh with regret when flowers fall, but when flowers are in full bloom, they don't see them happily cherishing it. In the second year Ivy divorced him, the roses in their wedding room had all withered and died. And in the small town thousands of miles away, in Grandma's yard, roses bloomed all over the yard. But those beautiful blooming flowers had long since no longer belonged to him. John suddenly raised his face. He was afraid he would miserably shed tears right in this overwhelming heavy rain. In Ivy's new life that had begun, complete.